A house at the edge of a quiet suburban street. A lawn once dotted with toys, bikes, and chalk drawings now covered in flowers, candles, and stuffed animals left by grieving neighbors. This home, once alive with the laughter of 3 little girls, became the scene of a crime so shocking that it has reverberated far beyond its neighborhood. His name was Travis Decker. To those who passed him on the street or waved from across the driveway, he seemed like just another father. He was not famous. He was not known for greatness or scandal. He was, at least outwardly, ordinary. But prosecutors accused him of the unthinkable, murdering his 3 daughters, children whose lives had barely begun. And then, before police could bring him into custody, before the system could put him on trial, Decker vanished. For months, his name haunted the headlines. Was he hiding in the forests of America, living like a survivalist off the grid? Was he being sheltered by someone who sympathized with him, helping him avoid capture? Or had he ended his own life, his body lying undiscovered in some remote corner of the wilderness? In September 2025, hunters moving through a wooded area stumbled upon human remains. Alongside the bones lay fragments of clothing and personal items consistent with Decker's. Authorities now say the evidence points overwhelmingly to him. And yet, the discovery does not end the questions. If anything, it raises more. How did he die? Was it suicide, a deliberate escape from accountability? Was it the elements, slowly claiming a man unprepared for the realities of survival? Or something else entirely? And more deeply still, why would a father allegedly take the lives of his own daughters? What chain of despair, anger, or collapse leads to such an outcome? Tonight, Silent Veil traces the Decker case from its beginnings, the man who seemed ordinary, the night of horror, the months of flight, the discovery of remains, and the haunting legacy that lingers. This is not only the story of a fugitive father. It is the story of 3 children lost, of justice interrupted, and of a community that will never be the same. Who was Travis Decker? To understand how a case like this takes hold of the public imagination, we begin with who Travis Decker was before the crime. Decker was not raised in extraordinary circumstances. Those who knew him as a child and teenager remember an average boy. He was not marked by scandal or extreme behavior. He grew up, finished school, worked, and eventually became a father. By the time of the murders, he was living with his 3 young daughters. Outwardly, neighbors described him as quiet. He was the sort of man who waved politely but did not linger in conversation. He held a steady job, but he was not wealthy. To the outside eye, there was nothing that screamed of violence or impending disaster. But inside the home, pressures were building. Friends and relatives later described a man under strain. Financial difficulties weighed heavily. Bills accumulated, debts mounted, and the strain on his personal relationships grew. Some court documents suggested there were disputes in his family life, possibly tied to custody or parenting responsibilities. The 3 daughters were the heart of that home. Teachers and classmates remembered them as bright and kind, girls who participated in school events, who loved to play and learn. Their innocence, in hindsight, makes the tragedy even more unbearable. Those who later looked back at Decker's behavior noticed changes. In the months before the crime, he seemed to withdraw. He grew quieter, angrier in private, less social with those around him. Neighbors said he looked distracted, sometimes unsettled. Friends noted he avoided gatherings he once attended. Experts who study familicide, the killing of one's own family, often say that such crimes rarely appear out of nowhere. Instead, they emerge when multiple stressors combine: financial collapse, psychological breakdown, relational turmoil. A parent, instead of seeking help, turns inward, collapsing under the weight of their own despair or anger. For the community, however, the idea that Decker could be capable of harming his daughters was unimaginable. He did not look like a monster. He looked like an ordinary father. That contrast between appearance and allegation is one of the reasons this case drew so much attention. It forced people to question how much we really know about those around us, and whether the masks of normalcy hide cracks that can break without warning. The murders and investigation. The night of the murders, investigators believe, was unremarkable until it wasn't. The children went to bed in their home, expecting another day of school and play. But sometime in those dark hours, tragedy struck. The next morning, relatives began to worry. Phone calls went unanswered. The house was strangely silent. Eventually, authorities were contacted. When police entered the home, they discovered the worst. The 3 young daughters were dead. And Travis Decker was gone. Autopsies confirmed the girls' deaths as homicides. Authorities declined to release every detail, citing sensitivity and respect for the victims. What they did make clear was that the children had no chance to escape or defend themselves. The legal response was immediate. Prosecutors filed 3 counts of first-degree murder against Decker. Warrants were issued. His photograph was broadcast widely. Press conferences described the crime as among the most disturbing in memory. The community reacted with shock and grief. Vigils began within days. Outside the Decker home, flowers and stuffed animals filled the yard. Candles lit the sidewalks. At the girls' schools, classmates drew pictures, wrote notes, and left tributes. Teachers struggled to explain what had happened to children too young to understand. National media picked up the story, comparing it to other infamous familicide cases. In 2018, Chris Watts murdered his wife and daughters in Colorado, later confessing in a case that drew global attention. In 2012, Josh Powell killed his children in Washington state during a custody dispute. In 2001, Andrea Yates drowned her 5 children in Texas, later arguing insanity due to severe mental illness. Each of these cases shocked the world, and each raised questions about how such crimes happen. Decker's case joined that grim list. The betrayal of trust, the destruction of innocent lives by the one person meant to protect them, it is this inversion of parenthood that makes familicide uniquely horrifying. And in this case, the horror was compounded by one fact: the accused was gone. The fugitive period. When police arrived at the crime scene, Travis Decker was not there. In the hours between the murders and the discovery, he had disappeared. His absence turned the case from tragedy into a manhunt. Authorities issued a nationwide bolo, "Be on the lookout." His photo appeared on screens across the country. Local police, state agencies, the U.S. Marshals, even the FBI became involved. Tips flooded in. At a diner 2 towns away, someone thought they saw him eating alone. A hiker reported spotting a man with a backpack moving quickly along a wooded trail. A truck driver swore he saw Decker at a rest stop. Each lead was investigated, but none confirmed. Speculation exploded. Some believed Decker had meticulously planned his escape. Perhaps he had stashed cash, supplies, and maps. Perhaps he was living like a survivalist, off the grid in forests or mountains. Others argued he could not survive long without help, that someone, knowingly or unknowingly, was sheltering him. A darker theory suggested he might already be dead, his body hidden by wilderness. Media coverage turned the fugitive hunt into nightly drama. News anchors debated his whereabouts. Panels of experts speculated on survival tactics. Online, theories spread like wildfire. Was he in another state under a false name? Had he crossed into another country? Or was he hiding just miles from where the murders occurred? The public was divided. Some feared he might still be nearby, dangerous, armed. Others suspected he had ended his life out of guilt or despair. For the victims' relatives, the months dragged on in agony. They stood before cameras, tears streaming, begging him to surrender. They wanted justice, but they also wanted answers. Each day without an arrest was another day without closure. In the community, vigils turned to rallies. People demanded more resources, more action. Signs read, justice for the girls. The case became not just about one family, but about a community trying to wrestle with grief and fear. And through it all, Travis Decker remained a ghost, a name, a face, but no presence. The discovery of remains. In September 2025, the case took its most chilling turn. Hunters walking through a remote wooded area stumbled upon what they first thought were animal remains. On closer inspection, they realized the truth: human bones. They called police immediately. Investigators arrived and secured the scene. The terrain was rugged, isolated, far from regular trails or roads. Whoever had been there was not casually passing through. The remains showed signs of long exposure. Nearby, fragments of clothing and personal items were found. Authorities quickly suspected the body was Travis Decker. Forensic teams worked carefully. The site was photographed, mapped, and combed for evidence. Samples of bone and teeth were collected for DNA analysis. Experts explained that even months-old remains can yield reliable identification. Though DNA confirmation is still pending, investigators say the likelihood is overwhelming that the remains belong to Decker. The news rippled instantly. For law enforcement, the discovery meant the end of a costly manhunt. For families, it meant Decker would never stand trial. For the community, it meant closure of one chapter, but not of the case itself. Reactions were divided. Some expressed relief: the fugitive was no longer at large. Others were angry, feeling robbed of justice. Without a trial, there would be no testimony, no answers to the question of why. The questions that remain. The discovery of remains ended the search, but it did not end the mysteries. How did Travis Decker die? Was it suicide, a deliberate escape from accountability? Did he succumb to starvation, hypothermia, or exposure in the wilderness? Did he fall, injure himself, and slowly fade away? Authorities have not given a cause of death. Was he alone? Or did someone help him escape, only to abandon him later? Theories persist, especially given the months he survived without capture. And the greatest question: why? Why would a father kill his daughters? Investigators suggested possible motives: financial collapse, custody battles, psychological unraveling. Experts in filicide point to patterns: parents who kill sometimes do so to assert control, to punish a spouse, or out of despair. Yet each case is unique. Without Decker's own words, the motive remains speculation. For families, the lack of trial is devastating. Trials do more than punish. They provide answers, cross-examinations, testimony. They bring facts into the light. Without one, grief is compounded by mystery. Other cases offer comparisons. Chris Watts confessed, providing motive and details. Josh Powell died before trial, leaving silence. Andrea Yates was tried, and her mental illness was debated in detail. Each left different legacies. Decker's case falls into the category of silence, where remains provide an end to the search, but not to the questions. Media commentary reflects this tension. The body is found, the manhunt is over, but the haunting question of why remains unanswered. Closure, in the legal sense, never arrives. The legacy of the case. The legacy of this case cannot center on Travis Decker. It must center on the three girls whose lives were taken. They are remembered at their schools, where classmates drew pictures and planted trees in their honor. Vigils continue, candles lit in their memory. Relatives speak of their innocence, their laughter, their futures denied. For law enforcement, the case highlights the challenges of fugitive hunts. Resources poured into searches, tips investigated nationwide, yet the fugitive remained hidden until fate intervened. For the public, the case is a reminder to recognize red flags: isolation, anger, financial collapse, untreated psychological distress. These are warning signs, often invisible until it is too late. On a national level, the Decker case enters the tragic history of American familicide. It joins other cases as a warning and a wound. And for Silent Vale, the focus is not on the accused who fled, but on the children who can no longer speak for themselves. The woods gave up what they had hidden. But they did not give up the answers. Travis Decker will never stand in a courtroom. His motives will never be tested by cross-examination. His guilt will never be confirmed by a jury. Justice, in its formal sense, will never be served. But the memory of his daughters remains. Their faces, their laughter, their futures, those are the true legacy. The Decker case is a story of justice denied, of questions unanswered. But it is also a story of community resilience, of remembrance, and of the need to honor victims above all. This is Silent Vale. Subscribe for cinematic true crime every Tuesday and Friday, stories told not for sensation, but for truth, for compassion, and for justice.